welcome. We will now move on to our last presentation for the day. We had to squeeze 4 in tonight for scheduling, but we're moving right along. Finally, before we get to Community Development Block Grant, we have Commissioner Zemmel of the Building Department for a Building Department Outlook. Commissioner Zemmel, thank you for your patience, and thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councilors. Thank you also for accommodating school vacations and such in scheduling this.
Yeah.
I know it was a little bit of juggling in the beginning for scheduling. I appreciate you.
No worries. We're taking our first shot at doing something differently, so I appreciate coming in.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here. This is a bit of a different forum than when I'm regularly in front of the council. Unlike some of the departments that came today, I often am presenting in front of the council on a variety of issues. So I don't necessarily have to explain the background of a lot of what we do. So I was hoping to instead look at some of the changes that have occurred in the department in the last year, some of our accomplishments, as well as what we're planning on for the next fiscal year, so that you know exactly where we are and where we're looking to go. Because there were a lot of accomplishments that have happened in the last year. A lot of those are as a result of the grant funding that we received through the CDBG that we're re-requesting, and through a lot of work between our different departments and boards. And some of these changes that we're anticipating are because of technology upgrades through our OpenGov system and other systems that we're developing. So over the last year, the city authorized us, as I mentioned a second ago, a CDBG inspector position. We've gone between either 2 part-time inspectors, which was the original aim, to then we didn't get any qualified applicants for that position, so we switched it and posted for a full-time position. And we didn't really get any great applicants. We got some good applicants, but no great applicants. And during that process, we received one applicant who really stood out as someone who is Fitchburg focused, really interested in the future of Fitchburg, and is invested in it. And he originally applied for a different position, and I told him that it may be better for him to look into this position. And so he said he is able to do it after meeting with myself and the mayor, but only part-time. So we went back to our original model of 2 part-time positions, which will help the city in terms of savings on benefits and so on. So he started this past Monday. His name is Chris Rosinski, and he's 19 hours a week with the city. And what we're looking to do is change the traditional code enforcement model a bit with having him on board, because he's very much more a community activist and active community member as well. And so instead of just doing the typical enforcement with the hammer and the fines and everything, we'll still be doing that. We will be doing 2 paths concurrently. One is education and outreach, and one is the traditional enforcement. And the goal of that is to really build community around this and understand. So, as an example, when I was working with him a few days ago on how this might play out, I want him to coordinate with different departments like the planning department to know what kinds of grant programs and other programs they have occurring, as well as senior center, as well as mayor's office, to know what kinds of funds are available for our community members. And say, for example, he goes out and sees a dilapidated sign up on Main Street. He's going to have to cite that under our nuisance ordinances, property maintenance ordinances, and potentially zoning ordinance. And he's going to have to give them an enforcement notice. But along with that enforcement notice, I want him to get a brochure from the planning department about our sign renovation program to show that, yes, you have to repair this, but we have money to help you do that. And we're really looking to try to expand the community, expand the outreach side of it. He's also going to be reaching out first to members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. He came to their meeting last night, and then to individual councilors to do ride-alongs in their various wards and around the city to see what their concerns are from a code enforcement perspective, so that we can really get a handle on the problem, because right now, a lot of the issues, and he's focused just on the CDBG area, so the areas that are not target areas, I'll be reaching out for those because he is limited to the CDBG area. But the goal of that is to really try to understand the issues so that we can not just have to focus on abandoned vehicles and falling apart properties and people doing work without permits, which is very much going to be his focus as well. But we want to look at the community as a whole and really try to build Fitchburg up as a community and try to show that partnership with the community. So that's one of the big changes that we have kickstarted this week with Mr. Rosinski's start. And we still have the second part-time position open and posted for that. On that vein, in the last year, this council thankfully updated the abandoned vehicles ordinance. So now we have started utilizing the 40U process with that. I've built a new module into OpenGov so that we can actually start tracking that and enforcing it. And we started a few weeks ago with our see-click fix backlog was about 50 complaints because we weren't able to enforce it until that new law came into effect and until we were given the documentation from the clerk's office that had been ratified. And so once that happened, we went out the next day and started with enforcement on that. And we are starting to see some of these properties, they didn't even know about the rules. And we've done drive-bys afterwards and seeing that they're being cleaned up. We're soon going to start with the fines because we're starting to hit the deadlines where the courtesy notice is expiring. And now we have to start hitting people with fines. So we are reaching that point with our first round of projects. And hopefully that will start getting things, but it's going through the 40U process now instead of the courts. So things should be more streamlined. We've also made zoning changes within the last month to address some of our issues associated with site plan review that I brought up in front of the council a number of months ago that have now been rectified. And I'm working with the ZBA chair and with the planning department and others to really try to make this coming year a year of change and updates to zoning so that we can close a lot of the big question marks we have within our zoning ordinance. We've also created this new process for handling open and abandoned permits that have been an issue for our department and for also a lot of real estate transactions throughout the city that have stunted a lot of real estate transactions previously. And so through this new process, people are able to give us the list of the permits they want to close. We will review it. We charge $50 a permit to close it. And our team has to review it. For example, our plumbing inspector can't close it until he goes out and actually visits the site to see it. Our building inspectors, we have to do research on, same thing with our wiring inspector. And so that takes time, and that takes time away from being in the field. So that's why we came up with this fee. But in addition to that, once those permits are closed out, we end the process by giving people a letter that says, all of your permits have been closed out on this property, so that they can then take that to the buyer's mortgage company and be able to close more efficiently and more standardization within that. We've also, in the last couple of years, ever since the retirement of Robin Viola from our office, our former head clerk, longtime head clerk, we had a full-time head clerk and a part-time principal clerk stenographer. And that part-time position has been very much a revolving door. And a big part of that is because it is part-time. And so we run into issues where someone will come work with us, but they want a full-time position, and they leave us for another department or another agency that is able to offer full-time. And we run into a lot of issues at the counter with customer service that we are unable, if Mercedes, our current head clerk, is out sick or at lunch, that people aren't able to get the service that they need, and they have to come back at a different time. And so we just hired another part-time clerk who has a long history in Fitchburg. As a resident, as a student, she was a She was a Fitchburg Public Schools student by choice. She school choiced into Fitchburg, and since college has moved to Fitchburg, has now moved to Fitchburg after college. And so she's going to be starting in a couple of weeks in this position. But our goal is we really need a full-time principal clerk scribe. They changed the title. The union had the title changed to principal clerk scribe instead of principal clerk stenographer. When we did have the part-time person before, we often had to pay that person overtime, and they were going over their 19 hours because a large part of that job is also zoning board of appeals. That's the scribe or stenographer portion. And so we're paying a lot in overtime. And really the true delta, I haven't quantified it, but between how much we had to pay in overtime and how much the full-time position would be, it's not a very large delta. And the amount of services that we would be getting from having a full-time person would really offset that in terms of customer service, availability of the department, and increasing bandwidth for our current head clerk to be able to focus on other aspects of our job that she would like to focus on, but just does not have that bandwidth. Some of the changes that I see coming in the next year, other than the additional focus on community building and community relations, are streamlining the ZBA process, specifically in terms of writing decisions and getting decisions out and getting meeting minutes out. That's been very much delayed because of the fact that we haven't had the proper staffing for that clerk's position, because that is the role of the clerk. That's the scribe function of that, and that's regulated by our union. That has to be done by someone in that position. And so that has delayed it, but we're looking with the changes to the ZBA in general to streamline the process. So now, for example, the new zoning ordinance has an application completeness review portion in it. So before someone submits their application to the city clerk, they have to now go to our administrative staff to review and certify that the application is complete, so that there is no having to waiting period for the ZBA chair to go and review the application and delay the process and potentially missing deadlines like the current process has, because currently people just submit to the clerk and then it goes through the completeness review. That can delay a project by over a month. And so having this pre-check like the planning board does, that's now allowed under the zoning ordinance, is going to help streamline that process on the front end as well. Another aspect, another change is, a few months ago, I was presenting something about OpenGov, and Chairman Cruz asked about AI. And AI is somewhat of a mixed term within the government world. And there is a place for it with certain things, and there are certain things that AI just isn't meant to handle. One area where AI can help is with certain aspects of efficiency. And so the OpenGov platform has been going through a significant number of changes and updates in the last 6 months. They were acquired in the last year by Cox Communications, and ever since that acquisition, they've really focused more on user services. And a lot of the things that were promised to us a decade ago are finally coming to fruition now. One of the changes that they're anticipating by the middle of this year is enhanced scheduling. So what that means is, currently our inspectors tell people to call in the morning between 7 and 8 in the morning to schedule an inspection with them. Hopefully they'll catch the inspector on the phone to get it done, and then the inspector will fit them into the schedule. And then I'll frequently get calls from people saying, oh, I couldn't reach the inspector, or no one called me back, or so on and so forth. Under this new module that should be released later in the year, we should be able to set, this type of inspection takes this amount of time. There's going to be integration with the inspector's calendar so that things are blocked off when the inspectors take their lunch breaks, when the inspectors are scheduled for vacation, and so on. And we'll be able to automate a lot more of the inspection process that can also help us with streamlining things. Because in anticipation of this meeting, I looked at a lot of our statistics for the department in terms of how many inspections which division within the building department does per year versus how many permits are issued within each division, and where we can build in efficiencies. And I think that this integration of the enhanced scheduling will help us build in some of those efficiencies, especially within the building inspector side of the house. Because looking at our numbers, so far this fiscal year, our building inspectors have done a total of 1,208 inspections, and our wiring inspector, we have 2 building inspectors. Our wiring inspector, who's a single wiring inspector, but he gets help sometimes from his alternate when he's overwhelmed, has done 1,152 inspections by himself. And in the last 30 days, the building inspectors have done 130 building inspections, and the wiring inspector has also done 130 wiring inspections. So we have 2 inspectors doing the same number of inspections as 1 wiring inspector. Mind you, the inspections are very different. If they're rough inspections for the building, those can take an hour to hour and a half, depending on how big the building is. But this AI integration is going to make it so that we can have better parity and can then forecast better staffing levels in the future and be able to give better customer service to those people doing work with our department and interacting with our department. So there's that. Our permit fees went up about a month and a half ago. And so I looked at the last month over the averaged amount for the different permit classifications over the current fiscal year. And what we found is, on average, the building permit fees are about the same as they were before the fee increase so far. We haven't had any big projects, so that makes sense. We've had about a 24% increase in revenues in the last 30 days on on electrical permits. And we've had about a 2-fold increase in revenue, which percentage-wise sounds like a lot. In reality, it's only a couple $1,000s, but it adds up over time for our gas permits as well. Part of that is because what I found out in the last month, actually 2 months, we hired a new plumbing and gas inspector. We found out that previous plumbing and gas inspectors for, say, a gas hot water tank, instead of charging for a gas permit and a plumbing permit, they would charge for one and not the other, when they're supposed to be charging for both. So we were undercharging with a lot of these, when we should have been charging properly. And so now these fees and the scrutiny that I've put into these, and the scrutiny that our plumbing and gas inspector, our new plumbing and gas inspector, is having over the collection and setting of these fees, is showing that our revenues are increasing within the department. And I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on how those are as we're moving further into this cycle, so that we can see what kind of impact those permit fees have had. So that is about all. Fiscal year to fiscal year, we have had approximately the same number of permit applications in this fiscal year as we had the previous fiscal year. We have slightly less in permit fees that we received this fiscal year over the prior fiscal year, because we had a large number of projects the prior fiscal year that were big Main Street projects that really helped bump us up. And so this fiscal year, we haven't had as many of those very large projects as we had the prior fiscal year. So we have slightly less in revenues, fiscal over fiscal. But the number of permit inspections that have happened within our department, we've done about 200 more inspections this fiscal year so far than we did the prior fiscal year. So it's about level. Going over to the budget requests. I haven't seen what the final request is going to be from the mayor, so like Trevor said, I'm going to be basing it off of what we requested for our budget. I've already noted for staffing changes, we've asked to increase our part-time principal clerk stenographer to a full-time principal clerk stenographer. That's an increase of about $34,000 a year in salary for that line item. I've also asked to create a half-time wiring inspector for the amount of $45,600. I don't know if that's going to be approved or not, but that is going to offset our need to rely on our alternate inspectors. And it's also going to put us in line with the statutory requirements for inspections on electrical, because under the state electrical code, our wiring inspector is supposed to be inspecting properties within 2 business days of a request for inspection, and right now, he's about 2 weeks. And thankfully, we have electricians who understand the staffing challenges, but their patience is running thin. And we may run into some legal issues if we don't address the staffing issue and get the proper amount of staffing in order to get us in line with the inspection turnaround that we're required by statute for the wiring inspectors. Otherwise, the personal services lines are just step increases, that are just in line with the wage and salary matrix. That is resulting, other than those 2 position increases, that results in an increase of $30,171 just for step increases and wage and salary classification changes. So that's steps and union contractual side. So that number is $30,171 approximately. I don't have the final number on that, but that's where my ballpark is. I also, within the expenses and capital lines, I've requested $60,000 to change 2 of our vehicles, because the Ford Explorers that our inspectors drive are over a decade old. A lot of them are falling apart. A lot of them are subject to significantly deferred maintenance, and they're just getting worse and worse and worse each year that we defer the maintenance, to the point where we're going to be at salvage level at some point soon, and then we're either going to have to spend the money on mileage reimbursement or purchase new vehicles for the city, and it's going to be a wash either way, except that we may have challenges with one of our inspectors potentially retiring within the next couple of years, finding another staff member, because if we don't provide them a city vehicle to utilize, that's something that most building departments in the state do provide, and that might differentiate away some really good candidates. And we hold on to our vehicles pretty long. I mean, these Ford Explorers are over a decade old. I think at least 2 of them are 2014 Ford Explorers. And so, that being said, that's for 2 of the vehicles. There's a lot of deferred maintenance on our other vehicles as well, because we have 4 vehicles total for our 4 full-time inspectors. And we have 1 vehicle that is designated for the commissioner, but I very seldom use it because I'm in the office and meetings so much. So we often share it with the Board of Health, or now the CDBG inspector is going to be using it, or our backup inspectors use it. That's usually the oldest vehicle. And so I've also included increasing our automobile line by about $5,000 to address some of the ongoing deferred maintenance that I'm anticipating is going to be needed within the next year, like tires, brakes, and such.
Thank you, Commissioner Semmel. Questions from committee members? Councilor Boschman.
I got a question for you. On your fees, let's go back to your fees. You're saying the gas guy that comes up. If I replace my hot water heater, you're telling me that you're going to charge me a fee for the gas that comes into that pipe? I'm not putting a new line in. It's just hanging there.
It's for the connection.
So you charge a fee for that when the thing's already there? And you
Yes,
charge a fee for the hot water tank?
We charge it for the plumbing to the hot water tank, that's already there as well,
Yeah.
and for the gas connection to the hot water tank, because sometimes you have to change it. We have a flat fee for hot water tanks specifically.
Oh, you have a flat fee, okay. All right.
Yeah, the new fee schedule has flat fees for hot water tanks and certain other things that are just, we know it's just a swap out.
All right, I just wanted to check with that.
Just like with fixtures, we charge per fixture. We don't charge for different things. So if you're swapping out a faucet, we charge you for that faucet,
Oh, yeah?
like that.
All right. I just was saying, I think we're starting to nickel dime everybody to death. No, that's what I think sometimes when I see it. That's my opinion, but, you know, that's the way I look at it, when nickel diming people to get.
And I hear you, but those nickels and dimes add up to tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the year. And where we're in I think the last I heard was a $2+ million delta in the budget. I think that's what was said on Monday night.
6 million in the budget. 6 million, let's get that number
So-
right, 6.
Okay, even bigger. So with that delta, those nickels and dimes add up. And if we're not looking at them and not recouping any money that we should be by our own regulations recouping, then that's resulting in potentially less services for the residents of Fitchburg. So we have to be diligent in applying our fee schedules so that we can run city operations appropriately.
All right, I yield the floor for now, I'll wait till the budget time.
Thank you, Councilor
There'll be
Bozier.
a lot more questions.
Councilor Walsh.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Zemmel, did you say that the part-time person that you just hired is working, is it 19?
19 hours a week.
I just have a question. If that person, I was at the ZBA meeting last night.
Yesterday.
And he was here. If he's going to those meetings and he's doing community outreach and education, how is he going to do all of that in 19 hours?
So he's not regularly expected to go to the ZBA meetings. Yesterday was purely so that he could see, as I put it, how the sausage is made,
Okay.
and so that he can meet the members and see that side of it. He's not expected to go to those meetings. And it's going to be on budgeting his time. So the hours are intentionally not specific for him. And how we have it set up is we're week to week in terms of what his hours are, so that some weeks he's going to do night meetings and night inspections and drive-bys, because a lot of things happen after 4:30. He's also going to be working on weekends, doing things so that we're out there and we have a presence throughout. And so it's going to be really on communication and scheduling and priority setting between myself and him.
Okay. And when he's working the off, hours that are not, 9 to 5,
Yep.
is he getting the same, hourly pay rate?
Yes.
So if he's working on a Saturday or Sunday, he's not going to be getting
No,
double time? Okay.
correct,
Right.
correct.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Chair recognizes Councilor Fleming.
Yeah, those were a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. So I actually have his application and his letter in front of me where you offering him a job. And I know this job was offered to a few other people too who did not take it. But what I'm curious about now is because he was hired at a certain rate, and of course, this is showing it as a full-time position, but you hired him as a
So
part-time position.
We had both jobs posted. We had a part-time position posted and a full-time position posted. We had both job descriptions up. So
Okay.
he was hired under the part-time posting.
Okay, so now I'm just looking at the CDBG
Yep.
thing, and you're asking for, you asked for 118, and he got 75. So is this for the part-time position, or is this for both positions?
So the CDBG was filed when we were anticipating full-time. So we are now shifting it to 2 part-time positions. And we're planning on addressing that during the CDBG hearings.
Okay, so even if you split that in half, I calculated the hours for what he's getting paid an hour versus what that would be in a year. That's more than half of what you're asking for. So is it going to be funded through the city's budget, the rest of it?
No. So so I need to see what I requested for CDBG, because again, that was based on the full-time. But, so I have to look at that number? Okay, thank you.
And we have Community Development Director Liz Murphy here to help us out. Director Murphy?
Thank you. Because there was funding that was already allocated and approved in this current year, fiscal year that we're in, we're rolling, but it wasn't spent until now, this week. We're rolling some of that money over to next year. So that's why we actually reduced his ask once we looked at the math and calculated how much we thought we could roll over, so that we were asking for less CDBG in this year instead of just it going unspent this year and then kind of going back into the bucket in a future year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It also has come to my attention, and Councilor Walsh already alluded to it, was I was told that if this person is working the weekends, that he will be getting time and a half on Saturday and double time on Sunday.
No, because he's part-time, so I don't believe he's eligible for that. And we had that specific discussion during the hiring process.
Okay, but in this, the CDBG says now it's going to include clothes.
It always has included that, because this has to provide parity with the union contract, and the union contract includes certain stipends that are given to all the inspectors within the inspectors union. So because of that contractual parity requirement.
He's going to be part of the union even as part-time?
So we have to provide parity with the union. He's not, I don't believe he's a union member, but we have to, because this is off the union wage and salary classification, and the job description is very close to the union position, we have to offer them parity with the union members in terms of the fringe benefits.
Okay. All right, but also in the job posting, it says attend zoning board meetings.
As needed.
As needed, so.
As needed. If there's an enforcement case that's in front
Sort of
of.
two different entities. This is enforcement, and this is like a different branch.
Yep.
So I don't know why
the-
that would even be necessary.
So the zoning board meetings are a quasi-judicial branch. So say one of his decisions is being appealed to the zoning board, he has to go there to defend his position. That's what's meant.
All right.
The principal clerk stenographer is expected, or principal clerk scribe, I apologize, that is expected to go to all the ZBA meetings, because they're going to be taking notes, writing decisions, so on and so forth. But this position is, and it was said at the ZBA meeting last night, he was there as a courtesy so people could meet him, but he's not expected to come to these meetings regularly. That's why I'm there at these meetings, to address the needs of the department.
Okay, so I had some of the same concerns as Councilor Walsh. As far as, I just took some notes, the staffing issues.
Yes.
The staffing issues do exist. I'm not going to say they don't, but the staffing issues really are not with the staff that is in the office. The issue is with the ones who are not in the office.
Can you please explain?
Well, there's not a full-time building inspector in the office, which is what a commissioner that is needed. We know that.
And why is that needed?
And because I have had many phone calls from contractors, people in City Hall who have brought this to my attention, that emails are not being responded to. Sometimes it's a month before you respond to emails. So there's a lot of things going on that is not out here for everybody to know about. I get the phone calls. I hear the issues. You hear the issues as well. You're just not responding to them. How many times have I come to your office when you're supposed to be there and you're not there?
I don't know.
Many times.
How many?
Many times.
And if
And
I'm
I
not
tell
there,
them
is
not-
it, and if I'm not there, is it because I'm in a meeting
No, it's
upstairs?
because you have not arrived yet. You have not arrived yet on a day that you're supposed to be there. I'll be there at 10, 11 o'clock, and you have not arrived yet. So I'm just bringing this.
How do you know that I'm not out in the field or out in a different
Okay.
floor?
Okay, point of order, councilors.
Yeah, okay.
Let's,
I'll take it back. So that is some of the staffing issues. That's why people are aggravated, contractors are aggravated because they're not getting responses from who they're supposed to be getting responses from.
And-
I do think that having that other person in the office will help, but it won't solve all the issues. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Further questions? Seeing none, I just have a couple myself, Commissioner, because you had mentioned having some victories with streamlining things. I have also gotten a fair bit of concerns, particularly with the goalposts moving quite a bit.
The what?
The goalposts, like the metaphorically, like with permitting, excuse me. You mentioned some streamlining permitting processes.
Yes.
But a common thing I hear from developers, and I hear it enough that I need to ask the question, is to get those permits approved, there's always something added on, something added on, something added on. And it's never everything all at once so that they know what they need to do. It's first it's one thing, and then it's B, and then it's C, and then it's X, Y, Z, and the process goes on. And it's been said by multiple developers, enough that I have to ask. And it's been described to me several times as, counselor, I've been building for 25, 30, 40 years. I've never been asked to do the things I'm being asked to do in the city of Fitchburg. And so you mentioned that we're streamlining things, but that's not what I'm hearing.
So thank you for raising that question. So myself and our inspectors are at a conference today and tomorrow. And if any counselor went to that conference and asked 9 out of 10 inspectors at that conference how many times in the last week they've heard that exact quote about them, they will tell you a starking number. Mm-hmm. We are regularly being told, oh, so-and-so doesn't require this, why are you? Mm-hmm. And then we'll call so-and-so will say, we've always required that. That contractor just said the same thing about you. And so that is a red herring argument.
Okay.
The statement of never-ending lists, I actually make a point of, I number my lists when I give items. Mm-hmm. And when people submit other items, and I try to be as comprehensive as humanly possible with that list. So I've had certain developers who've gone on Facebook with our list and said, look at this crazy list that the building commissioner is requiring us to do. And the response has been on Facebook, yeah, but they're all legitimate issues. And because I go very above and beyond with trying to give comprehensive lists, and then when they submit items, I will cross off on that list and respond back, hey, you're missing item number 1, 5, 7, 9, 10, 9, 10, 32. Mm-hmm. And going back to that, I think the number of times when I ask for something new, unless it's something that they submitted a revised plan and part of the revision that they did was incorrect, otherwise, I can't think of any times in the last year, maybe one time in the last year, where I've actually said, oh, oops, I missed something on the first plan. Here, you have to provide it now. It's typically, I go by the list of items that are done, and I'll often check back with inspectors if I haven't heard from them, and not inspectors, applicants, if I haven't heard from them in a few months, saying, hey, where are you with these items? And they'll go back and say, oh, we're working on this, we're still waiting on documents from architects, or we're still waiting on docs from our contractor, or so on. So the only times when we have oh, you need to address these items now, are when they've submitted something and it's had new issues that weren't on the first one because they've made some change of some sort.
Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
And of the moving of goalpost, there's another way to interpret that question, which you've asked me in previous meetings, about turnaround times for permits. Mm-hmm. And turnaround times for permits are very fluid depending on the work that's happening in the department. So by statute, we have 30 days to get back to somebody after they comment to us or they send us things. We make every effort possible to get back to people as quickly as possible. There are times during the year where that's going to be closer to 30 days, but the vast majority of the year, it's closer to 12 hours or less. Right now, we're at about 1 week within the department because I've had so many meetings and we have this conference and we're dealing with budgets and lots of other things that I'm at about 1 week right now for turnarounds within the department.
Thank you for answering my question. I've got to raise the concerns of my constituents, but I appreciate you answering.
Of course.
Further questions from committee members? Commissioner Zimmel, thank you very much. We appreciate you